welcome in or welcome back to my channel. My name is Deb from DG Reads, and it's time for another ARC attack. If you're not familiar with my ARC attack series, this is basically my excuse to keep up with some of the highly anticipated books that publishers and or authors have sent me advanced copies for, and it's a series that I really enjoy because it means trying to get some book reviews out into the world, possibly before these books hit the shelves or shortly thereafter, to help anyone who might be considering picking one of them up determine if it might or might not be for them. This particular session of the ARC attack might be a little all over the place. I'm actually filming this introduction right before I go on vacation, and I know I'm going to be taking some ARCs with me potentially, and those will be in my vacation vlog, which I will link. So I'm not entirely sure what books are going to be in here, what ones are going to be on the vacation vlog. Who knows? We'll figure it out as we go. That said, I actually have already started book one. The Unlucky Ones by Hannah Morrissey is the fourth book in her Black Harbor series. This one comes out on March 25th, and I have a gifted copy from Macmillan Audio. This is a series that follows transcriber, or former transcriber at this point in the series, Hazel. But in this case, the book actually opens with Cole, the detective who once upon a time was involved with Hazel. And the body that they have discovered to kick off this book is Hazel's ex-husband. And of course, this raises questions of Hazel's potential involvement, because Hazel's been out of town for quite a while. This seems like it has a little bit of a time jump following her last story, but her ex-husband has just died, and it turns out she's back in town. So there's a lot of questions coming out of this. We are following both perspectives, from Cole's perspective and Hazel's perspective. There's some lingering feelings between the two. There's some questions. This whole series, this setting of Black Harbor, is just a really atmospheric and kind of dark, oppressive kind of a setting. It's a town overrun by drugs. There's a new drug on the market that basically is causing people to rot. It's a very disturbing kind of concept. There's a lot of dark images in here. There's definitely some body horror as well. A lot of talk about addiction and about what that means to characters. And of course, a mystery element of who killed the ex-husband, but also why is Hazel in town? What's been going on? What is up with this new drug on the market, and how is that involved as well? I am having a good time reading this one, as I have the rest of the series, and look forward to continuing on, and I'll be back with final thoughts. I've now finished up The Unlucky Ones, and I had a good time with this one. I think if you've read the other books in the series, this one kind of follows along the same vein, same tones, same kind of darkness to it. I don't necessarily know that you have to have read the previous books to be able to pick this up and just read it. I think it gives enough context to everything that it catches you up on things, because there were things I didn't remember that well from the previous books, since I've been reading them over the span of years that they've been coming out. So I think the author does a good job of throwing that in while also not feeling like it's an info dump of everything that's happened in books 1 through 3. There are definitely trigger warnings with this book. Suicide is a discussion point for sure, and of course drug use, being that there is a whole who is putting these drugs out in the market type of storyline as part of this mystery, and of course violence. There's also discussions of spousal abuse and kind of different things along those veins as well. I did like how this one wrapped up toward the end. I think there's room for more books, but it doesn't feel like it ends on a cliffhanger where you don't feel like this book wrapped up in and of itself. So in the end, this one is getting a solid 4 stars from me, and I'll be back once I have some books to talk to you about. Hello again. I am back from vacation. I did get to a couple arcs while I was on vacation, so if you're interested in my thoughts on Vera Wong's Guide to Snooping on a Dead Man by Jessie Q. Sutanto, or Saltwater by Katie Hayes, or White Line Fever by Casey Jones, those will be in my vacation vlog, and I will have that linked. But I'm going to go ahead and continue on with reading more arcs now that I'm home, starting with Slayers, Every One of Us, How One Girl in All the World Showed Us How to Hold On by Kristin Russo and Jenny Owen Youngs. And this is obviously tied to Buffy the Vampire Slayer in some way, shape, or form, so that's what encouraged me to request a copy of this one because anything Buffy related I tend to enjoy. I didn't know a lot about this one when I started reading it, but the opening kind of introduction to the book really kind of lays out what to expect from this, including some of the trigger warnings for it. The two authors for this are the co-hosts of a Buffy podcast, and they also are two women who were at one point in a relationship who went through fertility issues, pregnancy and miscarriage, and ultimately a divorce, but still stayed partners in this podcast who became friends. All of this is kind of in the introduction to the book. And this really is a memoir of their lives and their relationship, and it's very heavy hitting. It's definitely pulling at heartstrings. I think it's really well written so far. I am about at 40% of the way through, and this book has a lot to it. You've got, occasional illustrations. You have song lyrics because one of them is a musician and includes kind of songs for each of the episodes of the podcast related to the episodes of the show. And some of that music is in the audiobook as well, because I did get a gifted copy of the audiobook from Macmillan Audio, and I've really been enjoying listening to it as well. I don't want to give too many thoughts at this point because with a memoir type read, I don't feel like my thoughts tend to change a whole lot from the midway to the end point, so I want to save thoughts for that end point. But I did want to check in. This one is due to come out from St. Martin's Press on April 8th, so far I'd recommend it. We'll see what my final thoughts are though. Okay, I have now finished up Slayers Every One of Us, and this was a fantastic book. I think it did a really fantastic job of merging the ideas of Buffy the Vampire Slayer with the real life memoir of these two women. They kind of go back and forth in terms of who is narrating the story, and you do get some duplicated moments a little bit as you get the same kind of idea from both perspectives, but that's very minimal, and I think where it is in here, it's needed. I think the inclusion of the information about what season of Buffy they were on, what episode of the podcast they were on, I think did a good job of kind of keeping up with the themes of what they were going through in their life and how there were parallels, and all of that was really well done. The audiobook was fantastic, although I will say the two women have somewhat similar voices, so it wasn't like I could immediately know which person was talking at any given time. But I did want to point out that in the physical copy, you get a lot of really interesting appendices, and this includes some information about the cast, where they've had interactions with the cast, things that some of their listeners for the podcast have written in about with some interesting insights into the show. You get some of the chord sheets for the songs that they wrote along the way, and just some interesting additions to the book in here as well. I believe it did say that with the audiobook there is a PDF, so I think you'll get that in there as well, even though it's not part of the narrated audiobook. So this overall was a 5-star read for me. I think it was an engaging read. It kept me interested. It was an interesting perspective on a lot of real life issues, presidential election, disappointment in the presidential election, the show itself, the failings of the show, the highlights of the show, and all of that as well. I don't think you should go into this expecting it to be highly Buffy the Vampire focused. It's really more about their podcast on Buffy the Vampire Slayer and their lives during that period of time. But I thought it was really well done and one worth picking up if it's something of interest. So this one again comes out from St. Martin's Press on April 8th. Hello, Architect Vlog. I've been neglecting you. I know in the grand scheme of me editing together this vlog, it won't really make a difference to you that I've been neglecting you, but in my mind, I know I've been neglecting you. So it means I'm not going to get a lot of these reviews out before the books hit the shelves, but this next book, I can guarantee I will have this vlog up before this book hits the shelves, and that's because it's March and I'm reading a May book. But I just got the audiobook today from Macmillan Audio, and I wanted something kind of light and fun, and this seemed to suit the bill. And that is The Love Haters by Katherine Center. This one is due to hit the shelves on May 20th. In this book, we are following Katie, who is someone who makes videos professionally and also puts up videos on YouTube. She is in danger of losing her job. There are a ton of layoffs going on, and her coworker presents her with an option to do a story, and this may help preserve her job. This job requires her to get on board a helicopter, go out over the water, prepare and train for helicopter crashes, and oh yeah, she doesn't know how to even swim. She kind of fudges her way into this job. Then she finds out that the subject of the video she's supposed to put together is this coworker's brother, and there's a lot of messy family dynamics going on here that mean that she's being sent in this coworker's place. Her target for this story is not happy about it, but of course, things are going to change. They're going to develop a relationship and things will ensue. This one I am having a fantastic time with. It is a lot of fun. It's had me giggling throughout. It's had me a little bit concerned at the beginning because I don't necessarily like going into a relationship at the start with lies and misunderstandings and miscommunication, but all of that comes out very quickly. Things come to light, and both of these people are pretty much on board. The man in question is someone who is a hero, and his name is Hutch, and he has been filmed rescuing people, animals, everything, and he has stardom as a result of this, even though he doesn't really want it. His brother has labeled him as a love hater and someone who is not interested. I don't know that I'm getting that read from him at all in the pages, really. He is definitely a good friend. He's definitely a good guy, and we can understand very quickly as we get more details about him why maybe he is the way he is. Our main character has a lot of body issues, or she has more so even in the past, and that's something that gets explored. She had a boyfriend and fiance who developed fame after she was already with him, and that went really badly. She became the target of internet trolls, and there's a lot of feelings tied to that going on in here as well. I think so far the book is balancing everything very well. I'm currently 52% of the way through the audiobook for this one, and I am really enjoying it. I was supposed to be getting a physical copy of this one, and I got a notification from UPS today that it would not be delivered. Apparently it got damaged. It's been floating out there in UPS possession for the last month, and I got a notice that they couldn't recover the contents and were disposing of it. So thank you to Macmillan for trying to send this one to me. So I am really glad that I was approved to get the audiobook for this one because I am very much enjoying consuming it in that way, and disappointed in the whole UPS shenanigans, whatever they did to it. I really am curious, but happy to be reading it at all. So I will get back to my reading and then get back to you once I have an update. I finished up The Love Hater, and overall, I enjoyed this one. It was a lot of fun. Overall, it definitely had me giggling in places. It had me just with a smile on my face reading this. This is an author who I think does a really good job of making things amusing, mixing in some really heavy-hitting topics, and painting a really good picture overall. There was definitely tension in one of the twists that happens later in the book that had me very much hooked. I didn't expect things to go in a really bad direction, but it still had me on the edge of my seat, which I really appreciated. I think there was a little bit too much miscommunication going on in here and things being kept from our main male character that I really just didn't completely buy into our main female character's reasons why she was doing that. But it's one that I definitely am looking back on fondly already because I did finish this 2 days ago and completely forgot to film my final thoughts. So this is one I think if you've read Katherine Center and enjoyed her in the past, if you enjoy her focus on first responders, that definitely is a heavy theme in this one as well. And I think it was just a fun time time and one I would definitely recommend. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and pick up my next arc very shortly, and I'll be back once I have some more thoughts for you. I'm back with my next arc, and I'm about halfway into Cold Eternity by S.A. Barnes, and this is a gifted copy I received from Tor Nightfire. I also have the audiobook gifted from Macmillan Audio. This is an author I've really loved in the past. I love Dead Silence. Her last book wasn't my favorite, but I still overall enjoyed it. So I've had high hopes for this one because this is an author who combines horror and science fiction, and that's a combination that really works well for me. In this one, we are dealing with a sentient AI, and that also is something that can sometimes work really well for me in a book. We're following Ihli, and she's on the run. She's been wrapped up in this political scandal. Something she didn't intend to happen happened. Things went wrong, and she's trying to hide her identity. She's trying to stay under the radar until things blow over. She winds up taking a job on this floating cemetery, basically. It's a museum of people who were cryogenically frozen, but in a world where being able to recover these people from the stasis is not something that science has discovered how to do, so they're essentially dead, even though they're frozen. And she's one of only 2 people working at this station, or at least that's what she's been told. She's seeing weird things, she's seeing people or creatures or something else on the station, and the AI is seemingly maybe communicating with her. She's slowly discovering that things are going on the ship. The other person on the ship, the one who hired her, maybe he has secrets. Who knows what exactly is going on. This has been very slow burn. It's definitely been building as the story goes. I'm at about 52% in the audiobook, and for sure the tension is starting to mount, but it's going relatively slowly. I'm hoping the creepiness factor ups itself in the second half, although there definitely have been some moments that are standing out in my mind with what we've read so far. So I am very intrigued to keep going with this one. I'm just having a lazy night, crocheting as usual, and hoping to finish this one up pretty quickly. I got through the first half very quickly today, so I'm assuming if not tonight, I certainly will finish it by tomorrow. So I'll let you know once I have. I have now finished up Cold Eternity, and I really enjoyed this. I think still in my mind, Dead Silence is the peak of S.A. Barnes' atmospheric writing, but this one came in definitely second, pretty close second too. The idea of this all happening on this barge, for lack of a better term, floating out in space with all of these cadavers, these people, these frozen entities on board, is just a creepy setting to begin with. Then we start hearing about how people keep quitting because they get creeped out and disappearing in the night because they leave, and we have to wonder what exactly is going on. And this takes some weird twists and turns, and there is AI. I don't know that I would necessarily say that that's the main focus of the story, or at least it's not what got the majority of my attention out of the book. For me, I think the part I enjoyed the most was her kind of having to wonder, what is she seeing? What is she sensing around? What is waking her up in the night? What is going on the ship? And is it something that can be explained easily? Is it something more? And I think the author does a good job of leaving a lot of questions in our mind throughout the book that do get resolved in the end pretty well. And I really appreciated that about it. And overall, this one's getting a solid 4 stars for me. I liked our main character. I got why she was hiding, why she couldn't speak up in some situations. And I think we got a pretty good sense for the larger world, even though we're in this isolated setting. I love an isolated setting in a book, so that's always peak interest for me as well. So this is one I would recommend. It is out on April 8th. So by the time you're seeing this, it's probably already in the world, but it's definitely one to add to your TBR. Not too much time since my last update has passed, but I'm in my PJs. I'm ready for bed, but I did want to update you because I am 45% of the way into my next arc, and I do want to be able to continue on with it tomorrow. So the book that I'm reading was one I picked up on the spur of the moment today, and that is Ask for Andrea by Noelle Ihli. And this is not a new book, but it is a new audiobook. It appears this author is getting a bunch of their books put onto audio by Simon Audio on Tuesday, the 25th of March, and that's tomorrow in real time as I'm filming this. So I did receive a gifted copy from Simon Audio, and I was in the mood for something quick and thrilling and something that would grab my attention today, and this is suiting the bill so far. This one is kind of a unique take on the whole serial killer concept, and the reason that it's unique in my mind is that the perspective we're reading from is entirely from ghosts. Basically, there is this man who is going on to dating websites and posing as a eligible bachelor. He seems to have the ability to charm people in the short term at least, and he has killed 3 different women. We are reading from the perspective of these women after they are dead, and they are working toward the idea of shutting him down, getting him caught, keeping him from hurting other women. The book opens with a series of these women being killed, being attacked, and that was a lot. At the very beginning, I wasn't quite sure if we were going to get a ton of that throughout the entire book, but I would say yes and no. We are seeing him go after other women. We are seeing him accomplish some of his goals toward other women, but we're also seeing our ghost protagonists fighting back. We've got one who is kind of babysitting her bones, essentially, and hoping to influence someone to find them. And then we've got one in particular who is following him around and yelling in the women's ears that he's sitting next to and trying to cajole into bed and trying to stop him from being able to drug them and rape them and do all sorts of bad things. So it's a really unique book. It's very quick. I want to say it's 7 or so hours, 7 to 8 hours, something like that on audio. So it is a very quick read. And so far I'm enjoying how different it is. I'm really curious to see what kind of the final outcome is going to be and how all these 3 girls are going to maybe work together at some point to get answers to get this, or if it's going to continue to be kind of 3 different storylines. I didn't mention the third. We also have a young woman who has very recently been killed, and her parents are trying to figure out what happened to her because she's basically a missing person at this point. So those are the 3 kind of different storylines we're getting. I did take a little bit at the beginning to figure out who was who and that these are 3 different perspectives. And that's something that maybe if I had it in print might have jumped off the page a little bit more to me compared to just consuming it on audio. But like I said, I'm enjoying this one. I am looking forward to continuing on with it tomorrow, and I'll be back with final thoughts. Checking back in because I owe you a wrap up on Ask for Andrea. I wrote the physical book review yesterday because I'm trying to speed up the process of getting the review out since the book just came out yesterday in real time. But that in my head meant I'm done with this book. No, I still have to update the vlog. Sometimes my brain does things like that. But anyway, I did finish up the book and I enjoyed it overall. I liked the way the ghost dynamic kind of worked in here and the way that gave the book a twist on kind of a female rage, female revenge type of story. It's definitely younger characters. One of them was about to go to college. The other ones, I'm guessing, were kind of around that same age or a little bit older. So I'd say probably new adult to adult, but definitely younger characters. And that's not to say that their youth really played into what happened to them or that they made that many bad decisions when it came to this. This man really had a way of charming people and coming across as normal until he got frustrated by something or until things did not go his way, and then he threw a temper tantrum that resulted in someone dying. I was quite pleased with how things wound up with him. We wound up spending time with his family toward the end of the book, and I liked the way that that got wrapped in as well. And ultimately, his wife is his victim as well, because she's been mistreated by him, dragged around the country by him to keep going around killing these girls, which she doesn't know is going on. So I think that the book wrapped up quite well for me. I wouldn't say it necessarily got to edge of my seat territory like I was kind of hoping for when I picked up a thriller, but it definitely had some good tension toward the end. And once I got going in that last 20% or so, I really just didn't want to stop. So overall, this one's getting a 3.5 for me. Like I mentioned, this is not a new book, but the audiobook is newly out on March 25th. And this is definitely an author that I would be happy to pick up more from in the future. So with that, my next two arcs that I was hoping to squeeze into this particular vlog are both physical only reads. They don't have audiobooks. So that's going to take me a little bit longer. So we will see. That is my hope. You'll know from the thumbnail if I got 2 more books in, but here's hoping. I'm now halfway into This Book Will Bury Me by Ashley Winstead. This is a gifted e-arc that I received from Sourcebooks Landmark. If you saw my vacation vlog from Mexico, I did try starting this then and I got about 10% of the way in before I decided it wasn't a great vacation read. Not because I wasn't interested, but just because the book opens with our main character dealing with the loss of her father and dealing with funeral prep and paperwork and all of these things that were just a little too close to real life for me, and therefore not something I wanted to be reading while I was relaxing and having a good time on vacation. I let a couple weeks go by and I have now picked it back up, and I'm happy to say I'm really enjoying this book. The idea of grief is still there. Our main character turns and talks to her father, or at least reacts to things to her father, who is now ashes, but that is kind of it at the moment in terms of the grief element that was a little bit too close to home for me. In this one, we are following a young woman and she is at a crossroads in life. She's dropped out of college following her father's death and she's not quite sure how to handle life. She winds up getting sucked into a online chat room about a true crime that was happening, and it was something that was relatively close to where she lived and therefore something that she got invested in. And she stepped up and looked into something for the group, this set of amateur crime solvers in this online forum, and she winds up getting taken in by kind of this elite group of online crime solvers and becoming one of them, where they take on more and more cases. The way this is being written, it's being written from the future. Things have gone down. The main character is saying things like, well, you know what happened. You've seen the scene of me getting arrested, or you've seen this and how it played out badly, and giving nods to this. And she's basically writing this memoir, I guess you could call it, to justify everything she got into, how she got into it, what happened, and of course, all the best intentions. So it's a really interesting setup to begin with. There's a lot of interesting conversations happening about the benefits of having these amateur people involved in these cases, and maybe they do help solve some of them, but also getting in the way and potentially putting people in danger in situations. So I am really enjoying this now that I'm in it and invested in it and excited to keep going on it. So I will be back once I have some final thoughts for you. If you hear any background noise, at the moment it's not too bad, I don't think, but there are work crews out in the street doing something across the street from me, no clue what, but they're up to something and it's causing a little bit of chaos. So hopefully they stay relatively quiet. I did finish up this morning on my way to work, This Book Will Bury Me. And overall, I enjoyed this one. I didn't 100% ever feel 100% hooked into it, and I don't know if that's just the fact that I read it kind of piecemeal, reading the first 10% and then making my way through the next 40% or so, and then I wound up picking up on audio since it is out now and available through Hoopla at my library, and that could be a factor, or it could be the whole grief framework in this book just didn't 100% hit for me, or maybe it just wasn't 100% the book for me. But I overall overall enjoyed it. By the end, I definitely wanted to see how things wound up. This type of narrative style where you're hearing from a character after the fact and you're getting kind of these hints of, you of course know what happened, you saw me on TV, you saw this, you saw that, isn't always my favorite narrative style, so that could factor in as well. But I think in this case it did kind of work because it allows our character somewhat to kind of have a little bit more insight into what she was up to and what was a mistake and what wasn't. I always question in these types of things where it's someone writing their memoir, how much they would include things like, I turned and looked at my dad, who is in an urn, and I expected him to seem surprised, or I seemed surprised, and so I showed him that. I don't know. Some of that stuff, I don't know exactly how that fit into the narrative. I don't know if I'm making a ton of sense. I'm really tired tonight. But the mystery elements, the twists, there were definitely some I did not expect, and I really liked the way this went. I liked the way that we saw this interplay between these amateur detectives and law enforcement and how that worked and how that didn't work. And I really enjoyed the found family aspects and some of the complicated relationships that come out of that. So overall, I think this one's getting a low 4-star from me, maybe a 3.5 to a 4, but it was still a good time. It's one that I definitely enjoyed more than is it The Last Housewife? That one did not work for me. I think it's been a while since I read In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, but I think that one maybe I liked more. I don't know, it's hard to say. But this is one definitely still worth picking up. The audio was good once I picked that up from the audio as well. So with that, I will be back once I have my next book with thoughts for you, which should be pretty soon. I've made it halfway into When the Moon Hits Your Eye by John Scalzi. This one actually just came out. I'm running a little bit late with reading this one. It was a 3/25 release, and this is a gifted copy I received from Tor. This one, you begin the story with people in a museum, and they realize there's something wrong with the moon rock that is on display. It doesn't look right. They finally break into it to find out who may have stolen this piece of history, this moon rock, and discover it's been replaced by cheese. Well, this is odd. Of course, the box that it's stored in is still fully sealed. They have video of the display and they only see somebody pass by it in seconds. How could they possibly have changed it out? Then you move on to additional points of view in this book, and it's not just that the moon rock has changed to cheese, it's that every piece of the moon, including the big one up in the sky, is now made of cheese. And it's bigger, it has cheese eruptions going on it, and this is just put forth as fact in this book. This is what has happened. And then each chapter is almost like an interconnected short story. We're getting a ton of different POVs in here, and they do relate back to each other. You hear reference to things from other chapters, but they almost can be taken as separate stories in a lot of ways. We're following people who were meant to be going on a moon mission. And that, of course, is called into question by the fact that the surface of the moon is now cheese. Then we've got a billionaire in here on the level of Musk and Bezos, and he is still trying to make the trek to the moon to be the first billionaire in space, basically. We have people who will do anything to try to get a hold of this moon cheese for eating purposes. It's kind of like a thought experiment of, if the moon became cheese, what would people do? What would the reactions be? How are people going to change their perception on religion and on science and on all these different things? I would say I'm enjoying this one. I'm not loving it as much as I had hoped to. It's not quite as much cheesy fun as I might have hoped with this book. I think there are some sections where I have had some giggles. There are some where I've just kind of lost attention with some of the POVs. So it's taking me a little bit longer to get through than I would have liked, especially since I only have the physical copy. This one is out on audio, but I think it's an Audible exclusive, so I am reading this one physically. And I'm definitely wanting to continue. I kind of am curious what the ultimate idea of this is going to be. Is it going to go catastrophic? Is the moon going to break down? Or is it going to go back to normal? Or what really is the ultimate purpose in this book? I don't know, but soon I shall find out. I have finished up When the Moon Hits Your Eye, and overall, I would say I liked this. I didn't love it. I think I had told you already, this really feels a lot like interconnected short stories. We're following so many different perspectives across the course of the book that we don't really return to very many of them. There are even a couple of chapters in here, I would say, where you almost forget about the moon for a big chunk of it. There was a chapter where we're following a young author and she's really excited to be writing, and we get this whole backstory of her history of writing and being a really gifted student and all these things. And then it isn't until really the end of the chapter that the whole moon being replaced by cheese comes into play, and it ties in because she gets upset about the fact that she doesn't have time to actually become a published author before this potential moon catastrophe takes over the world in different ways. But again, this feels a lot like the author was having a thought experiment. What would happen if the moon suddenly became cheese? Who would this impact? What would their different perspectives be? We have conspiracy theorists. We have the religious aspect of how does this play into the Bible or to God's word? We have scientists who can't explain what happened or why it happened. We have the student population throwing parties to flip off the moon, and there's just all sorts of different takes on it, and I find it really interesting. There were definitely sections where I was less invested, and definitely some perspectives where I really was hooked on what they were having to say. In the end felt a little anticlimactic, but honestly, I don't know what I expected from this in terms of how it was going to end up or how it was going to come to a point in the end. I think the way it ended made sense. I got a laugh out of a few things, and overall, I'm thinking this one's landing around a 3.5. I am having a hard time kind of rating it in terms of it being a solid narrative because it's not something that really has a plot and pacing in that way, but it still was an enjoyable read. I can see people absolutely hating this, and there were chapters where I did get bored, and I can see people really liking it if it hits your right level of humor. And I think it's one you might just need to try and see if it's going to work for you or not. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. And then I decided I'm just going to go ahead and wrap up this whole vlog right here so I can get this out sooner rather than later. I just this morning filmed a whole book haul, and I have so many arcs that are calling my name that I just want to keep going on the arc train. And pretty much right after I close this one off, I will be starting my next installment because there are books that I'm eager to pick up right away. But if I don't cut it off here, I just could keep going indefinitely. So I'm going to do that, get this up soon. The book haul will be coming, I think, shortly after this one. I think this one's going to go up first. Don't quote me on that. You may have already seen it by now. For some reason, my scheduling for April, I keep going back and forth on when I want to do things. Let me know in the comments below, have you read any of these books? Are any of them on your TBR? Or what's an upcoming release that you're really excited for? If you've made it this far, but you don't have anything to comment, give me a moon or a cheese or a cheesy moon emoji for when the moon hits your eye. If you could hit that like button below, I would surely appreciate it. And subscribe if you're interested in more of my arc attacks, more of my book hauls, and more of my bookish content in general. But for now, I'll go ahead and leave you here and see you soon in a new video.